What's up, fans? Welcome to another edition of Just Winging It. It's the 4th episode, and we've got a familiar face staring across from us here at the screen, and it is the former voice of the K-Wings. You know him well, Joe Roberts. What's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, it's great to be here. What an honor. What a privilege to be in the first four episodes. It's pretty. It means you're either running out of guests so quickly that you had to call me, or I'm actually in your top 4. So I'm going to go with the latter, but glad to be here.
Joel Martin actually passed me off to you. So he said, I don't want to do it. Talk to Joe Roberts. I'll do it later.
That seems very on brand for Marty, if we're being honest.
Congrats on the newborn. What's life been like as a dad?
Dirty diapers, weird sleep patterns, but a lot of smiles, a lot of joy, a lot of fun. Nora was born 12 weeks ago, so our hands have been full, but our hearts are full as well. So it's just been a treat in every sense, an amazing journey. And throughout this whole sort of strange stay-at-home situation, the silver lining in all of it for me is that I get sort of an unexpected paternity leave to bond with her. So, from that standpoint, glass half full, no doubt. Obviously, we miss being able to do what we love. I know you're experiencing that, PD, but to take the glass half full, to appreciate the fact that this is time I never budgeted for is pretty special. So I'm enjoying the ride.
We asked the fans for a lot of questions because I knew there'd be some good ones for you since you were here for 3 years. And a good majority of the questions were asking about Nora. Sue Alcamuff, the head of the off-ice officials who you worked with for 3 years, she wants to know how Nora's doing. Eric Goldstein said, how's Nora handling not having hockey, which I'm sure she's well aware of the lapse in hockey.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife, Jessica, and I were laughing because during the sort of thick of hockey season, she oftentimes, we travel a lot, guys like you and me, and we're on the road, and it's frustrating for partners a lot of times. And then all of a sudden, what was frustrating for her was the fact that there were no more games, there was no more travel, and I was at home all the time. So I think in our 9 years together, we've seen more of each other in these past couple weeks. So that's been kind of funny. But, again, I just sort of defer back to the time that we have that I never anticipated having has been just an absolute treat. And to be able to bond with your newborn like that is really, really neat. So, she's happy, she's healthy, she's smiley, she's amazing, and warms my heart on every level. And, we're just taking it one day at a time and sort of learning on the fly, which is definitely something that we've had to remain flexible with all things. So it's been fun, though.
Before we go any further, I got to thank you for I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you lying to Tony about my qualifications. So I appreciate that much from afar. How's life in Utica been treating you?
Life in Utica is good. Listen, everybody knows that it takes a little fudging to move your way along. So, I would say that, I should be very clear that people in Kalamazoo are lucky to have you. You're obviously very talented. You have a great personality. So I think it's fantastic. But things in Utica are good. It's a weird situation for all of us. We had a really, really skilled hockey team, insanely skilled hockey team. And we thought that we could have made a little bit of noise. So, I'm sitting here. It's Thursday. I would fully anticipate that we would be prepping for game 1 of a playoff series tomorrow, against whom I have no idea, but I'm pretty confident in that fact. So being in this pause is like living in limbo. So it's sort of strange, but I think everybody's trying to make the best of whatever their situation is. New York State is under its sort of non-essential stay-at-home orders. We're just kind of following those and trying to stay healthy in our household to make sure that whenever things return to normalcy, we're ready to rock and roll. So, big picture, we're happy because everybody's healthy and doing well. But, a little disappointed because we can't be doing what we really want to be doing right now, and that would be chasing a Calder Cup. So, again, glass half full is how we're trying to take in the whole thing. But it's just the way it is for now. That's normal for everyone. And normal right now feels, abnormal.
Right now, we're talking with the voice of the Utica Comets, Joe Roberts, former K-Wings broadcaster, in our coffee during quarantine, I guess, if you will, just winging it. Right now, we're working from home to flatten the curve because the world is upside down and uncertain. What doesn't have to be uncertain? Your marketing. A piece of advice from Dan, the founder of My Pocket Marketing. Don't spend it if you can't track it. There's a smarter way for businesses to make their marketing work. Visit mypocketmarketing.com/kwings to learn more.
Now that's a pro's pro, I got to say, because I'm sitting here thinking this is going to turn into a question. And all of a sudden now all I want to do is take a look at that company. So I must say that was a seamless live read and a pro's pro. I'll say it again, my friend. That was excellent.
I appreciate that because I'm sweating right now. I was so nervous. No, I will say this, Joe, and I don't know if you can relate to this or not, but you're pretty good at growing the beards. You're probably better than I am, actually. But the longer this quarantine drags out, I feel like I'm going to look like Brent Burns pretty soon. And it's going to be bad.
Yeah, I mean, you have more teeth, obviously, so that's good. But yeah, it's there's certainly not an art to it. The question is how long can you stand looking at yourself in the mirror? So I think there's a lot of quarantine beards that are happening right now. I'm working on mine, and like I said, if we can't be playing in the playoffs, I still want to find a reason to grow a beard. So I'm letting it rip, and I hope you are too.
Tell me about these Puck the Virus shirts you guys are selling that took the world by storm after this quarantine started.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. We had we have a pretty skilled staff, and what happened was an idea was pitched to Robert Esch, who's the president of the Comets, and he loved the idea and called us all together. This was, I think, the first Friday where the season was paused. So we gathered around in the executive's office, and he said, here's the idea, here's what we're doing, here's what we're moving with. And I sort of blurted out, hey, what about Puck the Virus on the shirt? And I sort of have been joking with people. It was very much on brand for Joe Roberts because I love a pun, and I also don't always wait to be called on to speak up, and I literally just blurted it out. So it was very much me as far as that. But it moved quickly, right? Our designer slapped it on a shirt. We had a company who was willing to work with us and turn them around next day, and just like that, the sort of cogs of the machine were going. So as far as the numbers go, I think we were somewhere around like 2,500 or 3,000 shirts that were sold. All 50 states, most provinces. If you sort of look at the map of where we sold shirts, there was one that was sold as well to the northernmost part of Alaska. So it was really neat to see the hockey community rally together, and all in an effort to make sure that those who were affected by a work pause or stoppage, to hopefully put people whole, or as close to whole as they possibly can be, because everybody has families, everybody has a life, everybody has bills to pay, and it's really challenging for a lot of people.
A question came in from, I think, a big Comets fan up there. It should be Comets Corey is the name, asking you your favorite or most memorable call. Now, ever since I've known you, my favorite thing about you as a broadcaster is your personality shows through on the broadcast. You're not afraid to throw out a joke or a cliche or whatever it may be to get some laughs and to make some waves. And I've got a couple in mind myself, but I want to hear your thoughts. Do you have a favorite call?
Well, listen, man, we're in the entertainment business, so I guess it is what it's what we got to do. But yeah, so Comets Corey, by the way, if anybody's watching this and wants to know how they can keep up with the Comets the best way possible, Comets Corey covers the team out west from British Columbia, and he does an excellent job. So he's definitely worth a follow if you want to know what's going on as far as the Utica Comets go. I know he's trying to coax me into the Brogan Rafferty call, which was an unbelievable goal. This kid went coast to coast. I mean, he danced through everybody and threw like a little chip shot into the top corner. It was an amazing goal. And while he was sort of racking up these points, you could see the chatter from Vancouver. Hey, call this guy up. Call this guy up. He's ready. Call him up. Call him up. And then he pulls off this goal, and I said, hey, Vancouver, I bet you'll like that one. And obviously they did. I think it was a couple 100,000 views later. It certainly caught the eye of a few people. So there's a few I was actually thinking of. That was a good one. The Colton Saucerman one from last year was hilarious because my voice cracked something holy. And that was another one that got, I think, about 1 million views as it made its way around the internet. But that was just the funniest story ever. It was amazing. I remember, I can hear it in my voice. I was actually laughing when they passed him the puck because I was like, come on. Why we shouldn't even be giving this guy the puck. So they end up giving him the puck, and he takes the shot and he scores, and my voice cracks, and it was just like the funniest. I couldn't believe it. And I'm not a premeditated guy. There's not much that I like think about, write down, whatever. I just kind of go, poof. And that shows if you count the amount of errors I have in any given broadcast. But the Saucerman one, I thought in the back of my head, I'm like, you know what? This could have some play to it. Kind of like Kalamazoo, there's a good beer drinking culture in Utica. I'm like, I think these people will appreciate it. So I let that one rip. And then I was thinking about one actually because of what it did to me physically. My second year in Kalamazoo, we were playing Toledo in a wild playoff series. I mean, it was bananas. And I think it was game 6 in Kalamazoo. I think we fell behind 2-0 in that game. And then we ended up coming back, and Josh Pitt scored a goal in, I think, the third period. And I remember calling that goal, and I remember losing so much composure, and it was so hot up in the press box. And I don't stand up much when I call my games. I like to sit down. It keeps me a little more composed sometimes. Well, I was standing up, and it was so hot up there. And when he scored that goal, I went basically bananas. And I remember getting so lightheaded that I actually had to sit down because I thought I was going to pass out when he scored that goal. So those are 3, I think, that pop up into my mind that sort of span the last couple of years and leagues and teams.
You can't script stuff like that. I mean, that's a great point about Saucerman's goal too. You can't even write that out, but you can have it in your mind that if he scores, I got something good. And then when it happens, you get the chills because you're like, no way is this actually going to happen.
I literally, I'm telling you, I was laughing when they were passing him the puck. I'm like, what if this happens? I'm like, it's not going to, no big deal. You don't have to worry about it. And somehow, this is like a grace of God thing because you get these gifts sometime in this business where you get a guy who comes in on a freaking PTO. They bring him in and he goes viral because he has a beard and his last name is Saucerman. It's like, what? The internet doesn't make sense, but when those stars align for you, you got to make it work. And then this dude goes out and scores the next day. Are you kidding me? So I'll tell you a story about that. The next game was a night later. We were sitting around the conference table in the office having a beer or two after the game. And Rob comes down and goes, how do we capitalize on this? So again, another T-shirt. We had a shirt the next game that said "Get Sauce to Utica" on it, on the front of it. And I'm not even joking. Doors open at 5:30. The shirt sold out at 5:38 the next day. It was insane. We sold, I think it was like 150 shirts or 200 shirts in 8 minutes. It was bananas.
You get royalties on that? That's your idea, man.
Yeah. So I've yet to go knock on the doors for my check. So I'll have to do that. I'll have to be smart about how I approach that one.
Yeah, now's not the best time, probably. My favorite Twitter name for a question that came in, the name is Wash Your Hands Frequently. So kudos to that guy. The question is, where do you get some of your great content ideas? So ones that come to mind for me are, I've seen you do some cooking shows, and then I've seen the Comets and Cars Getting Coffee, which I didn't even know where that derived from until you put out the Comets version. And now I'm binge watching it on Netflix.
Well, so behind every guy in front of the camera is a guy behind the camera pitching the ideas and telling you how to make them perfect. I know you have one of those, and Wash Your Hands Frequently is my current guy behind the camera who's finding a way to pitch the ideas. And so it'll warm his heart to know that I'm going to deflect all the credit to him. But you know what? Comets and Cars Getting Coffee is something that people really enjoy. I think what happens is athletes sort of fall into traps of sometimes only handling their business and sort of not allowing to be sort of learned about on a personal level. And so one of my skills is finding people to sort of pull back their veils on what makes them human. And that's what I try to get out of them. So it's a lot of fun doing that. I think the most fun I had was episode 1 of this year. We had this guy come through, Justin Bailey, and this dude is, I think he's the fastest skater I've ever seen in my entire life. And so we went to the showroom at the car dealership when we were talking about season number 2, and there is this highlighter yellow Camaro SS. And I go, what excuse can I come up with to drive this thing? And the answer was Justin Bailey. He's my excuse. So episode 1 this year, we're driving around in this Camaro SS. It's a manual car. Now I don't have a manual car, and I only stalled it out I think once or twice, but it was a lot of fun. So it's content that is different. We try to be different. We try to be unique, and we try to be ahead of the curve in a lot of things. And what we've seen, which is cool, obviously Jerry Seinfeld sort of laid the foundation for us to even have this idea, but we've seen other teams do things that are very similar. And so we're sort of flattered because we think, I wonder where they got that idea from. So it's been cool to see that sort of take off and gain popularity.
Got a fun one from New Non. Do you still live with a pet bird?
Yeah. So, well, no. Yeah, that may have been an old neighbor of mine. So I had a roommate, Jeff, and Jeff had a pet bird named Skittles. And living with Skittles was an absolute nightmare. So for those of you who have birds, I'm really sorry because they live for a really long time. And those of you who are sort of on the fence of saying, hey, maybe I need a macaw or whatever. I don't even know what kind of bird it was. I don't think it was a macaw, but like maybe I need a bird. You don't. You know what? You just don't. So no, the bird is gone. Now it's just an equally noisy dog, but he cuddles better than a sharp talon bird. So I'll sort of make that trade-off any day.
I want to backtrack because I jumped over a question that I had written down for you that was so important on the content question that we were talking about. Giving credit where credit is due on the brains behind our operation in Kalamazoo, they are wondering, have you ever considered coming back and playing Scott again from your off-season support group, which to me was my favorite video I've probably ever seen when you were still here?
That one was a lot of fun, and that got pitched, and that was so the funny story and all that is that was I think a day or two before my wife and my wedding shower. So she woke up, she went to work, she whatever, and I knew that we had this shoot later today, and ever the idiot that has to be the center of attention, I decide comb over a mustache has to be the way to go. So then, of course, when this is all said and done, my wife gets home, and I'm sitting there with a comb over and a mustache, and she goes, "Are you kidding me? Our shower's in 2 days. You are not going to go looking like that." So I went with a baby face for the first time in Lord knows how long. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was well scripted. It was well shot. It was timely and poignant, and it was just the best content often comes from people who get paid a lot more than you to come up with the ideas. I think that was like a Allstate commercial or whatever it was. What was that for? I can't remember what it was. But either way, it was the same way that Comets and Cars is clearly derived from comedians in cars getting coffee. If things work and you can put your own sort of unique branding spin on it, then I think the sky's the limit. And that one was a lot of fun. I love that. And if the opportunity presented itself, I would love to rekindle that role.
We may have to do a sequel and at the very least have you come on for a cameo.
That might not be a bad idea. Listen, that one was really fun. I actually ended up watching that the other day. And what's interesting too is that that actually made a very big impact on my hiring process in Utica, right? I mean, when it comes to play-by-play, a lot of people can do it, right? What sets you apart? What makes you different? Apparently what made me different was self-deprecating blooper reel and a comb-over mustache, a hockey therapist. So I know sort of, again, behind the scenes, there's always somebody who's making you look a lot better than you really are. And so I think there's some commission going to the guy who helped me out there in Kalamazoo. I think I might owe him $1 or $2.
Justin Taylor wants to know if you have a favorite nickname you've encountered, and that is the Justin Taylor that you called his games for 3 years. 4, actually, because he was up there this year.
Yeah, I don't know if he's fishing for me to say Tails. There's been a couple that I've seen come through. One of them this year I thought was pretty funny. Seamus Malone. He was a forward who came out of Wisconsin last year on an ATO. He earned an AHL contract. They ended up calling him Post because his last name is Malone. I thought that was a pretty good one. I think Sauce was a great one. Colton Saucerman was definitely a good one. Other than that, I can't think of any in particular that sort of pop off the page for me. I think it's pretty standard. Like, you can generally have a really educated guess of what somebody's nickname is going to be. Sometimes when you get something that's so off the rails, you're like, hold up, where did that come from? So you have to sort of inquire and figure it out. But for the most part, it's, run of the mill, first part of the last name, add a Y or an ER to the end of it, and there's your nickname.
Longtime K-Wings fan, Scott Dodes, who now lives in Texas. I had a chance to meet him during our trip to Allen this year. He says, longtime listener, first-time caller, where does Utica get your office supplies now that the Dunder Mifflin Utica branch closed?
You know what? It was tough that the branch closed. And it's funny, there's how many teams are there in the AHL that have branches? Obviously, there's Wilkes-Barre Scranton. But there's Utica. I think there was a branch in Syracuse, and there's a couple other ones, maybe even in Binghamton as well. So there's these branches around the show where you kind of watch and you laugh and you're like, oh, that's pretty funny. There's one in Connecticut too, where I feel like there's one where there's a team in the AHL. So
there one in New Hampshire where Manchester used to be.
Yeah, there might have been. So you're like. It's pretty funny. We call it we have a writer, Ben Burnell, who covers the team for the Utica Observer Dispatch, and that's another guy who, like, if you want to stay up to date on Comets news, Ben Burnell is definitely one of those guys. He always calls it the office branch battle when we play Wilkes-Barre Scranton. So it's kind of funny that it works out that way, but you also have to remember that the AHL is truly rooted in the Northeast. I mean, you realize how many teams are so close to each other. I don't know how many nights you spend a year in a hotel, but we spend 25 nights a year in a hotel. That's it, because a lot of teams are so close that it's a lot of day trips and a lot of quick turnaround. So being rooted in the Northeast, and that's even without Glens Falls. Worcester used to be in the league. Albany used to be in the league. So it's all rooted right here. So it's kind of funny when you consider the Dunder Mifflin sort of references that can be put around.
That's a good transition into Sue Hesch's question of how much is life on the road for you, at least this year, or this experience, similar to Slapshot?
Okay. Well, let's see. I don't think they don't let you smoke on the bus anymore. So that's probably that's one of the big differences, I think, from the days of Slapshot. But it's, that movie, amazingly enough, a lot of scenes were shot in the arenas in central New York, right? So the scene where the Hanson brothers are, quote, listening to the blanking song, that was actually shot at the Utica Memorial Auditorium. So a lot of that movie was filmed in Utica and Syracuse. So there's that Utica-Kalamazoo connection, right? Because the screenplay written by Nancy Dowd, her brother Ned Dowd played for Kalamazoo. He was Ogie Oglethorpe. He scored the first ever game-winning goal in franchise history. It's amazing how that all works out. So while it's a little bit different than the days of old in Slapshot, there's still a lot of things that sort of remain similar. Mainly card playing. Everybody's playing cards. There's tables in the front and in the back. There's a veteran game. There's a rookie game. So I think cards is probably the most sort of, or I guess the thing that hasn't waned with time. So I would say that's the big one.
Some equipment manager who goes by B Camp wants to know who your favorite roommate in pro hockey has been.
Well, by process of elimination, it's got to be him, because when I travel in the AHL, I don't have a roommate, so it's just me. So, yeah, I know. I can see the envy in your eyes right now. So he's my only road roommate I've ever had in hockey. So by process of elimination, and I'm sure he's not going to like this answer because he's probably wants it to really be from the heart, but frankly, it's the only option. So it's got to be Brent, who he and I, for 3 years together, roomed. He was the equipment manager in Kalamazoo, and then now he's up with the New Jersey Devils working on their equipment staff. So he and I frequently touch base. We keep in touch quite a bit. It was a great friendship that we built over the years. But, he would be my favorite roommate I've ever had on the road, because he's the only roommate I've ever had on the road.
Corey Butts wants to know why you made him call so many penalties in rec league.
Yeah, because I was a dirty player, and I didn't like to move my feet. I'm not skilled. I have hands like feet. I'm not a goal scorer. There's not much I do well. So then I get upset and I'll grab somebody or tug them down or whatever it takes, because I'm just not very good. So I force the hand of the officials, and I guess that's all part of it.
Joe, I find that hard to believe that you're not any good. And if that's the case, then I must be worse than I think, because I play on the same team that you used to play on here in Kalamazoo. Yeah, the Nordiques.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I am probably our worst player. I have big shoes to fill because you and Isaac both played on that team before me. And I just hear good things. I hear nothing but good things. I actually heard a story that one time in a penalty shot, you skated in and took a clapper.
I did, yeah, and I hummed it over the shoulder of the goalie. He was this little guy, and I whizzed it right past him, and it went like bar down and in, and I just kind of I think it was the winner too, because listen, this was like the 6th round of a beer league shootout, which is the only reason that I would ever be out there, because we were running out of bodies. I go, hey, let me go, and they're like, okay, and I literally pushed the puck, skated to the hash marks, and just whizzed it right past them. So, what's the old saying about the blind squirrel?
Well, Justin Taylor tried that in Indianapolis this year and scored on it. So I figured that was a good tie-in to everything we've talked about, how, slap shots in the shootout, it works at this level too.
Sometimes you just have to overpower a guy, and it's not like I was aiming. It's not like I was doing anything. I literally looked down and said, let's try to hit this as hard as I can, and it just so happened to work.
Just have a couple more questions for the voice of the Utica Comets, former K-Wings broadcaster Joe Roberts here on Just Winging It, episode 4, the coffee talk during quarantine. Business owners, what would it mean to you to know that for every dollar you spend, you'll earn back $5, $10, or more? My Pocket Marketing created a process to track the outcome of every marketing dollar spent. Business owners who hold their marketing budgets accountable are more successful. And if you're ready to remove uncertainty from your marketing and make better decisions, head to mypocketmarketing.com/Kwings. Couple more quick ones for you. How often are the K-Wings brought up in daily conversations up in Utica? That comes from Kyle Montgomery.
You know what? Quite a bit this year, because they did such a good job making sure that, I think, so in the past 2 years, we probably had like 15 or 20 PTOs per year. This year, I think we only had 1. Or maybe even 2. And one of them was sort of a proximity PTO where we were going to be in Belleville. We were short of body, so we got a guy from Brampton who literally just got in the car and drove over. And I think we only had one more other than that. So I think what happened really well this year was Utica used Kalamazoo to Justin Taylor was a PTO, but it still came from Kalamazoo. Either way, they used Kalamazoo really, really well. Tanner Sorensen was a constant call up, and I think that was a really good use of the affiliation system this season. So that was definitely something that had us talking more about Kalamazoo and more about you, PD. It was, hey, who's going to get in touch with John Peterson to let him know that we're doing this? So it was something that happened often. And frankly, Kalamazoo does a lot really, really well. And those are my experiences that I have in this business in pro hockey. And so I use those as learning experiences when we have conversations about entertainment, content, whatever sort of ideas that we come up. Those are where my experiences are rooted. And so it actually comes up quite frequently. And, it was a great place to be, a great place to work. I know my wife and I loved living there and miss it, because that was home for us for 9 years. So we talk about it in high regard. So that's for sure.
Well, Cameron Ross was asking just that. What do you miss most about Kalamazoo? And it's got to be some maybe a favorite restaurant or favorite brewery, or is there anything in particular?
Yeah, I would say, watch this in your corporate partners. I would say an ice cold beer in the beer garden at Bell's, followed by a delicious gyro from my friend over at Nick's Gyros. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. You know what? So, there's quite a bit that we miss. Yeah, we have a lot of friends there that are still there, and that are starting to have kids, and we sort of envision kids commingling and growing up, and life comes calling, and life requires change and stepping out of your comfort zone, and that's something that we did, and we're happy, and we're doing our best, and we're just plugging away like anybody else. So we miss a lot about being there, but we're also we're learning a lot about where we live now and the people, and it's very pretty out here. There's a lot of parks, there's a lot of good hiking and outdoor activities, and you sort of grind through the winters, which are pretty tough out here, but you get rewarded for it in the long run. So we miss living there for sure. And there's some certain specific things that we miss maybe a little more than others. But again, it's all part of the process in this crazy little go around.
Joe, thanks for doing this. One of my favorite memories, not favorite, I guess, but most memorable broadcasts ever was the 9-6 game that we called together between Kalamazoo and Tulsa a few years ago. That was one of the craziest games ever. Always a fond memory at Wings Event Center.
Yeah, didn't we take like a 5-0 lead and then you guys came back or something like that? Wasn't that something like that?
I think it was 5-0 before the ice dried, and then it was 9-2 at the end of 2. And then Tulsa scored 4 goals in the third, but it ended up being 9-6. And you and I just looked at each other like, what did we just watch?
Yeah, there's some crazy ones. There are some crazy ones that you run into. Like you have these sort of, and it was funny. I was just talking to Brent earlier today about some of the games that we were talking about, or he wanted me to bring up that I thought, I remember being crazy. Like I just remember there are certain ones that stand out so much. That's one of them. Again, that 7-game playoff series with Toledo was absolutely bananas. There are so many fond memories I have from calling games there, and there are some that just sort of stick in your head. Like this year, Justin Bailey, who I mentioned before, he had a run of 3 hat tricks in 4 games, which was like preposterous to watch. Yeah. There's certain ones that just sort of stick out and are really, really cool for whatever reason, individual accomplishments or coming out parties or just Wild West shootouts like that one. But there's definitely some special ones. There are ones that are a lot of fun, and that one was a lot of fun.
Well, man, I appreciate you doing this. Congratulations again on the new addition to the family. That's exciting stuff for you guys. And please stay safe out there, and looking forward to getting back to some hockey again, hopefully in the fall.
Thanks, me too. Wash your hands. Don't forget to use moisturizer after. If you don't have the gator skin between your knuckles, I can't trust you.
Joe Roberts, everybody.